Welcome to Startup Spokane, where hosts Steve Traben and Megan Halsey explore the excitement and momentum growing throughout Spokane's expanding startup community. Startup Spokane is a joint effort between Greater Spokane Incorporated's Startup Spokane, our friends at Well Dressed Walrus, and Spokane Talks Online. Now, here are your hosts, Steve and Megan.
Welcome to Startup Spokane on Spokane Talks Online, your podcast home for everything startup and entrepreneurship related in the Spokane region. I'm your host, Steve Traben, along with me, the lovely Megan Halsey. As you know, Startup Spokane is a program of Greater Spokane Incorporated, and we're here to provide you with our region's story of entrepreneurship and educate you about the resources that exist in our ecosystem. We want to share ways for you to plug in and connect to those resources so that if you are at the idea stage, the launch stage, the growth stage, you can be successful, whether you're growing your business organically here in Spokane or thinking about moving to Spokane to start your business. With that, Megan, let's introduce today's guest, please.
Yeah, we're really fortunate today to have Andrew Richards, who is the administrator and officer for the WSU College of Medicine's Technology Incubator. So welcome. We are glad to have you here.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, and we've had Andrew in the past, but
Yeah.
we thought this time you just completed a pretty cool event, and we wanted to spend our time talking about the your hackathon. So,
yeah, absolutely.
And
Yeah, could we start by explaining for
what is
everybody
a
what
hackathon?
exactly a hackathon is?
Yeah, that was a question we got quite a lot.
Yeah.
These are actually pretty common in other industries and other markets. So a hackathon is really where you bring a bunch of people from different walks of life together. We like to joke, you lock them in a room, pump them full of caffeine, and see what comes out. It's a little deeper than that. So we looked at other hackathons and events in places like MIT. They have a really great one out there called the Grand Hack, and Hacking Medicine. Stanford does these, but also just Silicon Valley, Boston, Seattle, they're very common. And we said, let's take a look at that, and how could we apply what these projects do, these innovative ideas, to what we're doing at the med school. And so our idea of a hackathon was, let's bring together students, not just from our med school, but from around the community. Let's bring together care providers. Let's bring patients together. Let's bring people from all walks of life that do work in the industry and see what kinds of solutions they can come up with. In fact, what kind of problems they can identify in the community.
yeah, that's what I wanted to ask. So,
Yeah.
are you giving them a problem statement, or is this or are they ideating?
Yeah, so we give them an umbrella. So for this year, our inaugural hackathon, we said, let's tackle challenges in rural healthcare, which is pretty broad. That can be tons of different things. And we encouraged our attendees to come with problems that they were passionate about. So rather than say we want to work on one specific, very finite issue, we let the attendees define how this would work.
And
Yeah.
what kind of problems did they identify as a group?
Yeah, so this was great. So we saw everything from lack of access to food, food scarcity. We saw problems with staffing in rural communities. We saw issues around seeing physical therapists. We saw lack of understanding of what the healthcare provider is actually telling you, specifically with people that English is a second language,
Okay.
challenges around that, just all across the board. And the beautiful part about this was we kind of had to teach people how to do a hackathon. Very few of our attendees knew what this was, which was exciting in a way because they came in with that blank slate, willing to try, just let's see what happens.
Yeah, so let's talk further about, because I have this visual of a hackathon being a bunch of people that are software geeks show up with their computers and they're going to spend all night coding something. But you're talking about, you're calling something a hackathon that may not just be about coding, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah, so let's run through what the event how
Yeah,
it played out.
yeah.
So it was 2.5 days. We started on a Friday night, which unfortunately was Friday the 13th, but that didn't seem to impact us in a negative way. And we brought a bunch of people together. I guess we had students, and for those in the community, we had students not just from the med school at WSU, but we also had College of Nursing and Pharmacy students. We had students from Whitworth, Gonzaga, Eastern. We even had high school students come and participate.
That's fantastic.
We had students come up from Pullman as well, and we had people as far from Seattle, California, Arizona came up. So we had a really
great.
good representation, but they weren't all developers. In fact, we had very few coders.
Well, and they're not all students either, because I know that some of the entrepreneurs that we work with participated, and they're professionals in the field.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good thing to bring out, that we had engineers and developers, but we also had UI designers. We had doctors. We had patients. They all came together. So on Friday night, it was kind of interesting. Everyone's a little unsure of what was going to happen. And we brought everyone together in the auditorium, and we gave them basically a hacking 101. And how we play through that was we had some mentors come up front and talk about the challenges in rural healthcare. We had a rural doctor come up, and Dr. Barry Bacon from up in Colville, and he explained the problems that he sees every day, which really set the tone for the event. He's one of our mentors. We had presenters speak about cybersecurity, the implication of health data, entrepreneurial and innovation in the healthcare space and what that really means. And then some of the technologies. We had people from Apple come up and speak about some of the tools you could use. But that really kind of framed what we wanted to do. Here's the problem, rural healthcare. Here's some things you can use to solve it. So giving our participants a toolbox.
Yeah.
And from there, we had the participants come up, and they had 30 seconds. We had a big bell to cut them off. And they each presented a problem they thought of. And it was, like I said, we mentioned before some of those issues. They're all over the board. And after that, we took all of the participants, and we had a big meet and greet kind of mingling session, and they self-formed teams.
Wow.
And
That's
we asked,
exciting.
yeah, so we asked people when they formed a team to not just, don't just work with people you know. And a team should be balanced. Don't be all developers. Don't be all students. Don't be all doctors. A good balance would be somebody with some development experience, somebody with medical experience, maybe some business knowledge, and share ideas and get out of your comfort zone. And a saying I've heard many times before is, outside of your comfort zone is where the magic happens. And you need to take a risk. So these teams self-formed, which was fantastic. And then the rest of the weekend was really, it would have been very unexciting if you came and watched on Saturday, because everyone was in a room with a whiteboard and computers, and they were all cranking away. And if you sat inside in some of those meetings, that was really fascinating. But they just cranked away from it.
And how many teams were actually formed, Andrew?
Yes, we had 7 teams come together.
Okay.
We had a little over 40 participants, which was what we were shooting for. We wanted to walk before we could run. We wanted to work some of the kinks out for this
And
event.
what was the intended outcome or goal? Were they to go and try to, like on a startup weekend, create a minimum viable product or a prototype, or some of these may not even be application centric, so I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. So we wanted our participants to create some kind of a product, an MVP or a prototype, primarily a prototype, more than just like a business plan. In fact, we didn't really push the business angle for this because, again, we have startup weekend and things like that. We wanted to spark innovation, and that ties us into our med school and how we want to shift our curriculum to be innovative. And kind of from the medical perspective, having, you walk into a medical environment and this is the way it's always been done, this is kind of a culture of following that. We want our med students to think, what if you did it this different way? And not being afraid to think that way. And in a safe space like a hackathon where you can try and fail and blow things up, that's okay. That was the goal, is to get that spark of innovation and a minimum viable product, which could be something you coded. It could be a demo. I've seen events where people build something out of cardboard and strings.
Right.
Yeah.
It just get something together more than a presentation.
And then did it culminate at the end of the weekend with a presentation?
Yes, so we kept it brief. Each team had 3 minutes to present and really focus on the problem they were solving, how they solved it, and who would pay for this.
Yeah.
What's at least the basics of the business component to it, and then some Q&A with the judges.
So what kind of criteria were the judges using when they evaluated these very diverse ideas against one another?
Yeah, so they looked at the problem that was being solved and how it related to rural healthcare. They looked at the kind of the wow factor. Did they actually build something? What else out there had been done? Because we wanted people to be creative and come up with something new. We wanted to see the very basic level of business viability, and for us in this event, we asked, who would pay for this? Would it be the patient? Would it be the provider? Would it be the insurance company?
Yeah.
At least at that basic level, doing a full in-depth market analysis in the healthcare space is probably not something you're going to do in a weekend.
Right.
So we didn't push them too hard.
Now, did they have like 24 hours a day to work on this? Because I heard
Yes.
that there's some people who slept over.
Yeah, we did. We left. We were at the pharmaceutical building on the WSU Spokane campus. Some of the teams spent the night on the floor. They brought sleeping bags, so that was exciting to see that come together.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible. How many participants did you actually have for the event?
We had right around 40 for other
That's
participants.
great.
Yeah, we wanted to keep it small for our first year so we could kind of learn the kinks.
Yeah.
And the interesting part about this is a lot of people came in not knowing what to expect.
Yeah.
And so now that we've done one, we can spread the word. We generated a bunch of content, some videos, some more marketing stuff will come out. So we think next year we'll really ramp this up and be excited
Very
about
exciting.
it. We picked up some great media through this as well. We had the WSU Spokane magazine just did an article on it.
Great.
The National Association of Medical Librarians, so it's part of NIH and the HHS. One of the participants wrote a blog post, and they published that about the event. So we're getting kind
wow.
of some national coverage on that, which is exciting. And along those lines, the participant that wrote that, she works with me in the incubator. Her name is Nancy Shin. She's a research librarian. And we also set up a research station, which I thought was pretty interesting. Librarians from Gonzaga and WSU came together, and they provided the ability to do patent searches, to do research, in-depth research. So as teams were like, I have this idea, what's been done, they could rapidly find ideas out there in the market.
And Andrew, you
powerful.
said the participants were kind of come from far and wide, universities, high schools. At the university level, were some of them faculty research types of people, or were
we
these?
had several PhD candidates.
That's what I wondered, if maybe you
Yeah.
had some of the graduate level folks that might be bringing some of their
in fact,
ideas.
we actually had a pretty good turnout of PhD computer science students, which I think were a hot commodity. A lot of the teams were trying to get them to join their team. We also had some bioengineering and things along those lines, and some medical stuff as well. So
Yeah, that's
pretty exciting.
great. Yeah, it sounds like a great event. And your plan is that was your inaugural hackathon, and the plan is to do this on an annual basis.
Yeah,
Wow.
so this was part of the original vision of the med school, was to do these events where we could bring together the community. We really want the med school to be a hub for innovation around medical technology. We feel like we can really drive that and be part of the ecosystem here in
Yeah,
Spokane.
what a
That's
great start.
fantastic.
Great start with your inaugural event. We're having a great conversation with Andrew Richards, Technology Incubator Officer for WSU's College of Medicine. Stay with us. We're going to come back and talk about those winning teams and their great ideas. We're here on Startup Spokane on Spokane Talks Online.
Hi everyone, I'm weather forecaster and assignment anchor at Spokane Talks Online, Colin Pittman, and I am honored to be the host of the new program, Spokane's Youth Spotlight, brought to you by Spokane Talks Online and the Spokesman Review, where we are interviewing and getting to know outstanding youth in our community each month. If you'd like to nominate someone in our community that you think should be recognized, that is doing something great here in the region or has an amazing story, visit SpokaneTalksOnline.com or Spokesman.com and look under Youth Spotlight to nominate. And be sure to tune in each month as we find the best in the Inland Northwest.
Hi, I'm Larry Myers, owner of River Ridge Hardware. Welcome to our garden center here on the corner of Garland and Driscoll. We have fresh plants that come in weekly from all of our local growers. We can make your garden look like our garden. Here at River Ridge, we've been here 30 years. We're your full-service neighborhood hardware store. This is our sprinkler aisle where my knowledgeable staff will help you put together your sprinkler system so it will make your yard lush green for the spring and summer. This is River Ridge Hardware's rental center, where we provide a multitude of equipment for rent for the do-it-yourselfer. Next time you're working on your home or yard this spring and summer, stop by, say hi, and we'll help you get the project done.
See you tomorrow night, and thanks again for taking care of the painting.
I got this.
Bye.
Weekends are made for painting. Let the experts at Rada Paint take care of you.
Hi. This looks amazing.
Rada Paint, over 80 years of quality, tradition, and trust. Find it in every can.
Welcome back to Startup Spokane and Spokane Talks Online, where we are talking to Andrew Richards, who is the Technology Officer or the Technology Incubator Officer for WSU.
Yes, it's a mouthful.
They just finished up a really amazing event called a hackathon, and we want to talk a little bit about some of the prizes and what came along with that. Was it just glory for the winners?
Yeah, so there is a bit of bragging rights. In fact, we had thought about doing a large cash prize, and we really wanted people to do this for to try something new, meet new people, and not just to literally come in and I want to get a paycheck. We did have cash prizes for the first and second place teams at $1,500, just for the effort they put in, and all the teams were recipients of some time at Startup Spokane. So thank you for that. That's fantastic. They're all appreciative of that. They also tie into some Mind to Market. I think we can talk about that a little bit, how those come together.
Absolutely.
But we also had trophies for everybody. That the first two teams. The funny thing is I'm kind of a hockey nerd, so we made this grand prize trophy that's kind of like a Stanley Cup.
Oh.
So we're going to put on the winning team names and all the team members. So each year we're going to keep growing this trophy, and we're going to keep it at the Tech Incubator. So right now it's sitting there with the winners' team names on there.
That's awesome. So let's talk about the top three teams, Andrew. Let's have you kind of take us through each of them and kind of what their idea or product idea is.
Yeah, let's take them one at a time, and we can kind of deep dive on each one.
First place.
Yeah, first place was a group called PT Me, and this was a great team. In fact, all the teams were great, so I'll probably say that a lot. They were mixed. There were a couple of WSU med students on the team, but there were some people from industry as well. Just a great mix of skill sets and some students from other parts of the city as well. Their idea was working with PT, and I remember physical therapists, and I remember the pitch for this by actually one of our med students, where she simply said, "Who here has gone to the PT?" And everyone in the room raises their hand. And then she follows up with, "Who here actually did the exercises?" And all the hands go down. And she's like, "I want to fix that." So they actually use an Apple Watch, and I think down the road they want to use some augmented reality stuff on iPhones to allow patients to track their physical motions. So they can do their exercises at home, and it can be tracked by a computer how well they're doing.
Accountability for doing your exercises.
Right?
That's
well,
good.
yeah. Well, and it also, my understanding was there was the ability to potentially program in so that you can make sure you're doing them correctly.
Yeah, and that's really big. And imagine as a patient, you do your exercises and going to see your therapist once a week or whatever, and they're able to say, "I see you've been doing them. This is a little off. Let's work on this."
Yeah.
And so how could you actually increase the effectiveness of these exercises? The accountability is a big thing. We were talking about ideas like, what about, how about insurance components to this, where you can say, I actually did the exercises and I got better. There's a lot of elements that this could just really feed into. So it was exciting to see that. But it was really impressive to go from, on Friday night, the idea of, we have this problem around physical therapy, how do I want to solve it? On Sunday morning, seeing this team stand up there and demonstrating it with an Apple Watch and doing the motion and having all the data up on the screen and actually showing it work.
Yeah.
And then showing what happens when it does work and when you're doing it wrong, how it's all tracked. And to see that come together in a day and a half was just it was really impressive.
Yeah, what's another interesting thing that they talked a little bit about when we met with them, because we have had the opportunity to meet with all of these teams at some level at Startup Spokane, is they were talking about how one of the challenges for physical therapists is the patient has to self-report on range of motion or how far they can reach, whereas if they have a device that actually shows and tracks what they've done or what they can do, they get a more accurate follow-up, so the physical therapist actually knows.
Yeah, absolutely. And so one of the big questions we've already started talking about is, how accurate is accurate enough? You know, and this is one of those interesting things about health technology. Researchers are like, oh, we want like 5 nines of accuracy and all of this. And I'm like, that, for someone doing a physical therapy exercise, 1 millimeter might not be what you need to worry about if they're not doing that movement correct at all. So, I mean, it's one of those interesting paths we get to go down as a team.
Right. Well, and when the standard right now is you asking me if I have a 60 to 90 degree range of motion, and I'm like, yeah, fraction's not my thing.
Right. So, was one other thing I want to say about this team as well. We have this thing at the med school called scholarly work. A lot of med schools do this. And we require our med students to do a project beyond just their curriculum. And so it's about 320 hours of work through 4 years. A lot of med students do research, and they'll probably get mad at me when I say this, but that's sitting at a lab bench with a pipette going like this for hours and hours. But we wanted to create other opportunities, and we've done that at the med school. And one of the ones I've helped with is how can we create a technology track where students that want to pursue an idea in technology, one of the students on the winning team is pursuing her idea, this whole business model, as her scholarly work project.
Yeah, that's great.
Exciting.
And that's what I was going to ask, because this would be a natural way for them to ideate, to come up with an MVP, and then to actually take it further. So the fact that then aligns with some of the requirements of the program itself, that's great.
Yeah, so a student literally doing this for curriculum component and working on building a business together, and doing both of those things at once, and that came out of 1 weekend.
Yeah.
So this is exciting. It's one of the best outcomes we could have hoped for.
No, that's great.
So let's talk about the next team. Connect
Second place team.
Yes, Connect H. This was another great idea that we saw, and I'll kind of frame this out for you. So this uses gig economy models to look at the staffing problems around underserved hospitals. And what does that even mean? So a lot of hospitals, they'll need a doctor to cover some shifts. They'll need nurses. They'll need different care providers. And in a large city, that's not usually that hard to solve. In like Spokane, we can do that pretty easily.
Yeah.
When you're in Colville or Davenport or Ephrata, that can be a challenge. So there are agencies that do this. The majority of these agencies have a 40% margin. And so they're incredibly expensive. So this group said, what if we use the gig economy model to have doctors that want to go, hey, I'll work a few shifts here and there. Why don't we just use that model where they can sign up on an app, they can build all the regulatory stuff around that. That's actually, you can do that. It's not unknown. It just has to be implemented. And they can say, I'll work. A clinic goes, hey, I need a doctor to cover these shifts over the weekend. They ping it out. Someone goes, I'll come out there for the weekend and do that shift for you. And this is what I'm going to charge. And by cutting out those huge agencies, can we actually find an innovative way to staff? So this team literally took that idea, they built it out, and they had it up and running, and they showed a quick demo of it on Sunday, which is really exciting.
Impressive.
Yeah, and let's talk about the coder on that team.
Yeah, so this is one of the fun things we talk about. The lead developer on the team is a high school student, which was impressive. So this is a team that had people from industry and different universities, but the person on their team that was slinging the code is still in high school. So we find that, again, that community-driven event, the excitement of it. What was also exciting is they did a little more deep dive into the business side of this. There are other companies actually attempting this model that have already raised $5-10 million. But they're all focusing on urban centers. And so no one has really taken a look at the rural. So they actually came up with an idea that I remember hearing the pitch going, I wonder if I can invest in that. So it was really exciting to see that come together.
Yeah,
Cool.
What I really liked about it was just how it just disrupts an existing model, and it focuses on those centers of care where having a hospital is critical and having a properly staffed hospital is difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. So seeing them come up with that, and again, it doesn't sound that innovative because this has been disrupted so many ways, but there's opportunities like this all over the place when you look into an underserved and untapped market like rural communities.
Yeah,
great.
and because we're getting short on time, let's move to Rise and talk a little bit about what they did.
Yeah, so this team, believe it or not, was actually all med students from WSU. And their idea was how can they address food scarcity in the community? And that's not just rural communities, just communities in general. Urban underserved, huge problem.
Yeah.
So their idea is why don't they bring groups together that have, and it's initially started as a kind of a cooking class idea, but their thought from the last pitch was let's bring people together. Everybody brings different components of the meal. We all cook it together, and then everyone has food to take home. So not only do you learn, there's a community element to it, but then people get to go home with food, healthy food. So people that might not have access to the healthiest food can actually get access to it by participating in this. Their idea, though, was to make this as a nonprofit, and the design is for it to actually go out of business.
Yeah.
It's to build this out, run, and as the community starts self-sustaining it, they won't need this group
Solve
anymore.
the problem.
Right.
Yes, so solve it and get out of the way.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of this altruistic angle, but it's actually addressing a real need. And we're really excited about that because so many times these events are so driven by, well, how am I going to make money on this?
Right.
And they said, we realize we're not going to make money, and that's okay. we could actually do this with a little bit of donation and a little bit of volunteer effort. We can make this happen. So this team has been looking at doing this as a community, as a student group within the med school and WSU Spokane. So that's exciting.
So I know these were just the top 3 teams, and I'm sure all 7 ideas were amazing.
Yeah.
But let's really quickly wrap it into the ecosystem. I mean, these groups of teams have an opportunity to leverage our region-wide entrepreneurial ecosystem, right?
Yes, yeah, that was one of the goals of the event. Like I said, we wanted to spark innovation, but the ideas that came out of it, we don't want them to die on the vine. If the teams wanted to pursue it, and we made this very clear that we're not forcing anyone to carry this on outside of the event. We also made it very clear the teams own all their IP. We're just facilitating this creative environment. So one of the prizes was working with Startup Spokane and access to the Mind to Market program. So the idea is the teams come out, if they want to pursue the idea, they can work with those 2 programs to take it from that prototype MVP and start growing into an actual business. Which from the tech incubator's perspective is perfect, because the companies coming out of that Mind to Market pipeline, out of the Startup Spokane, they're prime for a
that's pipeline.
Potentially come right back to
potentially
you.
come right back into the incubator. So it's a way that we can tie all of this together. And even if they're not a good fit for the incubator and they can find another place on, that's great. It's just we're creating pipeline and deal flow.
That's exciting.
Just from ideas coming out of one weekend.
It's awesome.
Yeah, well, thanks so much. We are actually out of time today, so thank you so much for joining us and talking about the hackathon today. I can't wait to talk to you next time when we'll get to talk more about your incubator, when you hopefully will be able to reveal some information for us. And I just want to thank all of our listeners for joining us today to help us share the story of entrepreneurship in the Inland Northwest. And we hope that you're going to join us for future Broad and podcasts, where we'll continue to bring you stories about successful entrepreneurs and links and connections to the resources available in our ecosystem. Talk to you next time at Startup Spokane on Spokane Talks Online.
Startup Spokane is produced in Spokane, Washington by SpokaneTalksOnline.com, which is a joint effort between GSI's Startup Spokane, Well Dressed Walrus, and Spokane Talks Online. Ask a question, recommend a guest, and hear this program again online anytime at SpokaneTalksOnline.com. We wish you a great and profitable day.